Hello and welcome back to my RC channel. I'm AndyRC and today I'm going to be taking a look at the Eachine TS130. You could say that it is the baby brother to the TS215. It is a 3-inch brushless micro, and as you can see, it's actually not in its stock configuration, which is quite unusual for me. I usually try and fly these things out of the box and leave them as stock as possible, but I think with this one it is a fixer-upper. So they have sent this to me as a plug and fly. I do think it's going to be available eventually as a bind and fly, because it says here bind and fly, but it comes with a very long servo lead, and I've attached a XM Plus to it. The servo lead, it's like this one actually on the TS215. It's very long, and yeah, I've changed it quite a bit. The first thing you will notice is that I've added a low ESR capacitor. It is a 330 25 volt microfarad, and when I plugged a battery into this, I was getting lines all over the picture, and then when I armed it, I was getting jitters. So I came to the conclusion that the ESCs that they have used just does not have enough filtering to filter out the noise going to the flight controller and also the VTX and the camera. So for me, this is a must, and I will link in the below to one of these because it really does transform the model. And the reason I was interested in this so much is the specifications, really, because it has got a higher spec, or a very similar spec, to the fastest 3-inch model that I have ever checked out. This is the Skyzone S140. And it has got some pretty beefy motors. They are a 1506 4100 kV motor, and it weighs, I think, 138 grams. This one has got a slightly taller stator motor, and it's the same width, so it is a 1507 and again 4100 kV. So I was thinking maybe more torque, more power. It is a little bit heavier though. It weighs 148 grams, but really these days it's not about the weight. 10 grams isn't going to make much of a difference, so I want to see if this one can break my own personal record for the 3-inch. So taking a look at other specifications, we have got 20 amp ESCs, and they have a 25 amp burst, so it's a 80 amp continuous and then a 100 amp burst, so it should be well capable of reaching those high speeds. The only thing I'm concerned about is the propellers. They are a dowel prop, and they are a 3056, which is a higher pitch than the ones that I used on the S140. By the way, it looks like they've discontinued this, which is a real shame. It's listed on GearBest, but I'm not sure whether that would turn up or not. It's certainly not listed on Banggood. By the way, Banggood has got Black Friday deals at the moment, so I'll link to that in the below. There are some absolute bargains there. But yes, we have got a higher pitch on this propeller than this one, but yeah, we'll have to see how it performs a little bit later. So yeah, we have got above that a F4 flight controller with Betaflight on-screen display. Sadly, there's absolutely no setup whatsoever, so I will take you into Betaflight and show you all of my settings there. And then above that we have got a switching VTX up to 200 milliwatt. It is using smart audio. And then up the front we have got a Foxeer Arrow camera, which is a really nice camera. Another problem that I had is that they had left the on-screen display turned on at the bottom for the Foxeer camera. Now they had removed the wires for the camera control board, and the camera control board isn't included in the package. So what I had to do was remove the camera and find another copter that has got those wires installed, and then I already have one of those boards from that copter, and then I was able to go into the menu and remove it, but it was a pain. Again, I think it was probably a one-off, but I thought it was worth mentioning. And I'm seeing if I can see what the lens is there. So 2.1mm lens. The only thing I will say is that there's not much room for the receiver to go in if you are using an XM Plus, because the servo connector here, it goes above the camera if you want it to sit underneath this top plate. I guess you could have it on the top of the top plate there, but I like it to be neat underneath, so I've used some cable ties there. I've also used a cable tie on the linear antenna for the VTX as well. It's using a micro UFL, but I was flying it around, and because this thing is so fast, without using a cable tie here, this just flops backwards and it just gets caught up in the props. And yeah, so this is actually a different antenna because the one that it came with is in pieces. Another thing that I changed was the battery strap. This is a full speed battery strap, so apologies to full speed there when reviewing a Eachine model. The battery strap that they provided was not long enough to fit a 850 milliamp battery, so they recommend I think it's a 550 milliamp 4S to a 850 milliamp 4S, but yeah, the 850 milliamp battery wouldn't fit through it, so I've had to switch that out as well. I'm going to be using the Tattoo R-Line 95C, which should be capable of 80 amps as well. So if we take 850 milliamps and times that by 95, then I think you get around about 80 amps. So I wouldn't use a bigger battery than that, really. I think this should be the perfect battery for these props, and we'll take a look at that in the flight a little bit later. Also in the package you get a sort of sandwich plate. I don't like these sandwich plates, and they give you a really thin mat. It's not like a silicon mat, so I've replaced it. This is a silicon mat here. The mat they give you is absolutely useless, and I think it's to be used with this sandwich plate, and all that's going to do is just dig your batteries into these screws here, which is no good. You get given a load of spare screws, which I really like because, you know, with these 3-inch models, lots of vibrations going on, you can lose some of the screws. You are given some carbon fiber spanners and a load of cable ties, and I've actually used my own cable ties here. I have routed them on the arms here, although I do find the RSSI isn't as good when you have them on the arms as when you have it up here, but that seems to be the trend. And you know, they can still get caught in the props there. I think the idea of having the antennas here is so that if you're going through tight gaps, then you know they don't get knocked or whatever, but it's going to get knocked anyways with this linear antenna up the top there. And you are given a spare set of these dowel props, and these ones are clear, and that is everything that you get in the box. This is the strap that they give you, and you know, as I say, it is not long enough to fit around a 850 milliamp 4S battery, so a bit of an oversight there, I think. And I think if you used a smaller battery, such as a 550 milliamp, then you're going to get too much battery sag with the specs of these motors. So I think you're definitely going to want to change out the battery strap. As I say, it's a fixer-upper. You need a low ESR capacitor on there as well, otherwise it's not going to fly very well and you're going to get loads of noise on the picture. Okay, so here we are in the Betaflight configurator. I think it was flashed with version 3.17, so you're going to want to select Omnibus F4SD and then the latest version, full chip erase, and then flash the firmware. I've already done that. So if we go into the ports, so I think this one is just S-bus only because it plugs in directly and I can't seem to find the stack anywhere. So yeah, I've got the serial RX on the UR6, and then we've got TBS Smart Audio on the UR3. Into the configuration, and it's set to D-Shot 600. I've got the motor idle speed at 6 so we don't get any flips of death. I have motor stop off. I have the maximum arm angle at 180. I'm using 8K, 8K, and I've got all of these turned on, but really you only need the accelerometer. We don't need barometer or magnetometer. I've put the personalization in as TS130 and then a serial-based receiver and S-bus down here. I've got dynamic filter, anti-gravity, and air mode, which was turned off. But you know, it's because I did a full chip erase. I would always recommend doing that. And then we've got RX loss and RX set on here, because there is no beeper, but there's not really need for a beeper these days. Power and battery. Now it doesn't have a current sensor, so I have just left it as onboard ADC, but it's not doing anything. I set the minimum cell voltage and the warning cell to 2.9 just because I like to look at the on-screen display when my battery is dying, and if I want to use a high volt, I don't have any high volts at this battery size actually, but you might want to put that up to 4.6 there if you want to use a high volt. PID tuning, so these are the PIDs that I used and also my rates. Now, spoiler alert, these PIDs, they do work with the dowel prop, but they work better with the gem fan flash, which you will see a little bit later. You get some prop wash when you do sharp turns, and that's something that 3-inches suffer from anyways. It's difficult to tune that out, but with the gem fan prop it didn't do that. And then if we come down here, I've got the I-term rotation turned on, the VBAT PID compensation, and the I-term relax. And then I've got the TPA set at 0.45. And then in the receiver, I have got TAER for my Tyrannus, and this XM Plus has got the RSSI firmware on it, so I've got that selected to AUX 4. we've got the stick high threshold set to 2000, but everything else here is left the same. I've got some RC deadband in there just so that the center of the stick is nice and smoother, and I've got some smoothing down here as well, so you can copy that if you like. And then in the modes, we have got arming on the aux 1, and then on the aux 2 I like to have angle mode, and then acro I like to have angle mode just for safety. And then we've got the beeper on the aux 3 there. I do not use flip over after crash or turtle mode because I don't want my ESCs catching fire if a motor gets stuck or something like that. That is completely up to you. On screen display, so it is a PAL camera, and I've got the voltage, I've got the craft name, I've got the RSSI up the top here, and I have got the VTX channel. I find that really useful when using smart audio, and I've got the flight time in minutes. And I could probably turn some of this off, but I can't be bothered, like, you know, max speed, you know, you wouldn't use that. And that is everything in there. I will just type in version so we can see Omnibus F4 SD, and it is version 3.53, and that is my setup. I didn't have to change anything in BL Halley Suite. All of the motors were turning the correct direction. It is props in though, and not props out, so you know, that is absolutely fine for me. Okay, let's line of sight this guy. Starting off in angle mode because, well, this is going to be a powerful machine, and I just want to make sure everything is okay before we start going crazy with it. Let's go for the punch. Wow, yeah, that is loud and powerful. So if it's quiet and inconspicuous that you're after, this is not the guy at all. However, if it's brutal speed, then I think this is definitely the guy for you. Having to flick it into angle mode to do these punch outs because it moves quicker than my eyes can these days. Let's try again. Yeah, that's crazy. Just as I suspected. But this tune that I've given it, I'm not hearing any oscillations. Of course, those usually show themselves more on the FPV flight. But I tuned a lot of these 3-inch monster quads, so hopefully it shouldn't be too bad. But yeah, this thing is absolutely nuts. Not going really above, you know, 20% throttle for the majority of the time. So yeah, it is a beast, this one. So back into angle mode and no drift, so that's good news. Let's bring it in for a landing and we'll do some FPV with it. Alrighty, let's take a look at some DVR footage. It's another gloomy day, of course, and you might see a little bit of noise, but it's nowhere near as bad as it was without that capacitor. So let's check out the speed, and we have 93 miles per hour. I was a little bit surprised about that, with these propellers being a higher pitch than the Gem Fan Flash. So what I did was, I did a complete flight with these propellers, and then I stuck the Gem Fan Flash props on. However, I do still think that the dowel prop is probably the best for this copter, and you will see why when I put the flash props on. So yeah, as I say, it's a fixer-upper, this one, and even when you put a capacitor on there, you still get a little bit of noise. I actually think it's more RF noise than noise coming from the ESCs. When you look at the VTX, there's no shielding, so you can get electrical noise that is feeding from regulators coming through to the VTX, but I don't think it's bad enough to, you know, worry about. This thing is definitely consistently hitting 92 miles per hour, and that is still very fast, you know. I think it's probably on par with the original, the 215. I can't remember what the speed of that one was, but I bet it's not far off this one. But yeah, quite a lot of things to change. Definitely find a way to get that antenna secure, otherwise it's just going to go into the props. This thing is fast and the air just blows it back and it just cuts it up straight away. You'll get about a, I think it was a 4-minute flight time actually, with a 850 milliamp battery. When I do the speed runs, you can see that the battery does sag quite a bit, but that is usual these days. And let's see, so yeah, 92 miles per hour, you can see it is sagging below 14 volts, so you know you are gonna probably damage your battery if you do too much of that. But you know, this is extreme testing just to see what the speed is really, and as you can see, the tune isn't half bad. We are getting some prop wash when the copter is descending and turning, and when I stuck the gem fan props on there, it didn't do that. I think it is a struggle with light copters in general, prop wash. You know, I think the weight of a freestyle copter, I've been flying a lot of freestyle copters lately, and I think the weight of them actually reduces the prop wash that you get on a corner. So yeah, I mean, would I recommend this? I would say, you know, it's an okay copter. I really wish they sold the S140 still, but the S140, it didn't have smart audio. But yeah, definitely faster with its props. So you can see there, flight time 4 minutes, coming in for a landing, and then I'm going to stick the gem fan flash props on, and you're going to see how it performs with those on. So here is the first speed run, and straight away 101 miles per hour, which is crazy really, isn't it? Because they're a lower pitch. 105 miles per hour, we're getting very close to the S140, 108 miles per hour, but what you will hear is the note change, and that is because the battery is sagging so much. I think it is just these batteries here, they are quite old, and you know, we've got the slightly bigger motor as well, so I'm not sure I'd recommend this prop. I mean, you know, if you go easy on the throttle, then it'll fly nice, but if you go heavy on the throttle, it will destroy your battery, but you will get top speeds out of it. Anyways, there you go, that is my review of the Eachine TS130. I'll put a link in there below if you wish to get one. Oh, and there's a code as well if you want money off. I will link that into the description. And as always, thanks so much for watching. Please continue to subscribe. Cheers.